Hello, Zoo Med fans. We're here at AnimalCon 2023 on day 2, and I'm here with Jeremy from Brassman Reptiles.
Heck yeah.
Jeremy, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
So, my name is Jeremy Turgeon from Brassman Reptiles. I also co-host the Reptile Talk podcast, and super stoked to be here for AnimalCon number 2.
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah,
you tell me it's a lot bigger than it was last year.
It is,
last
for
year.
sure. Yeah.
A lot more going on.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your pod? What do you do on your socials?
Yeah, so I primarily work as a reptile breeder, but my podcast is all centered around like telling the stories of the people involved in reptiles. Like there's so many podcasts that exist about husbandry and stuff like that, and I didn't want a carbon copy of that, but I've been lucky enough over the years to just meet some amazing people. And for me, that's how I've learned a lot of the most valuable information for keeping is just to talk to people, learn some of those, to hear some of those stories, learn some things from them. So that's kind of the basis of the podcast. So we just laugh, have a great time, tell some jokes, and then geek out about reptiles for an hour, and it's, for me, it's like the most organic way to be learning outside of doing your own research.
And as far as networking, I mean, this can't be much better.
Oh, this is the place to be.
Yeah.
It's absolutely
You're looking
the
to
place
network
to be.
and make more faces to interview. I mean, this is it.
Yeah, exactly.
This is it. So you say you're a keeper. What do you work with? What do you keep?
Oh man, I keep a lot of stuff because I don't like just one kind of reptile. So I keep various colubrids, corn snakes, king snakes, milk snakes, ball pythons, of course, blood and short tail pythons, Amazon tree boas, most recently black-tailed tree boas, Corallus ruschenbergeri, something new. Different geckos and stuff, Leachianus geckos, crested geckos, leopard geckos, just kind of a smattering of everything across the board.
Man, that's wonderful though. Well, reptiles are like potato chips.
You can't just have one.
You just keep going. Yeah. I was reading up on you and watching some of your content. It said you started at a young age. Like, how young were you when you got into reptiles?
I was about 5-6 years old when I first got into it, and literally was walking through the local pet shop with my mom, saw a fire-bellied toad for the first time, and like lost my and I threw a temper tantrum in the pet store until my mom let me get it. So,
and they're such a beautiful but simplistic animal. I mean,
yeah.
And then they're hard to find anymore now.
I know now you can't find them at all.
Find them anywhere. You're hoping there's somebody working with them because you can't find them anymore.
It's true.
So how did you take that passion for keeping reptiles and turn it into the podcast?
So it was again just the fact like I got really lucky. Growing up in Massachusetts, I lived 2 hours from New England reptile distributors. That afforded me many opportunities to meet other people along the way. Be like, yeah, I'm friends with Kevin, and people are like, oh well, I'm sorry, but so that awarded me a lot of opportunities to meet other people.
Sure.
It's kind of like my foot in the door. So again, like wanting to just talk with people and kind of learn from their experience and get those organic stories. That was again just the premise of like I've been really lucky, growing up having the access to these people. I want to be able to share that because a lot of these guys, especially the ones that have been around for a long time, some of them aren't really on social media like that. So the only chance you're going to get to talk to them is either in person. Or if somebody like me is able to be like, come on this podcast.
Do you find any of them to be hesitant to be like, I don't know, I'm not sure,
A handful of guys, like there's a couple local guys to me in North Carolina that have been around the block a while, and I'm like, man, I'd love to have you on this podcast. Totally no pressure. I'm not going to sit here and grill you for an hour. Like, let's just come hang and talk reptiles. And they're like, nah, just social media. I don't like my face being seen. And I'm like, come on, man. I just want to talk some stories, man. Like, you can put a paper bag over your head for all
and realistically, you're all reptile keepers. You'd probably be having these conversations whether there's a camera turned on or not.
Exactly.
That's what you're going to say. You'd be like, come on, we're just talking about reptiles.
Exactly.
It's nothing we wouldn't be doing when we get together any other time.
Right.
So
I feel like I need to go get like a little secret pen cam or something like that. So I got you, man.
Gotcha. Well, they make whole TV shows out of that these days.
Exactly.
So there's nothing new. You got any good stories about any of these interviews? Any cool places you've gotten to go or things you've gotten to see?
Some of my favorite interviews, like the most recent one I just did was one of the most recent ones with Ron St. Pierre out here in Florida.
Sure.
And Ron is diving really deep into emerald tree boas right now. And when I spoke to him before, when we locked him in on the podcast, he was saying how he's like, man, like I'm learning all these new things about emeralds. Everything you think you know about emeralds, throw it out the window. And I was like, wait, what are you talking about? Like, this is really interesting. It was probably the most thought-provoking husbandry-related conversation I think I've had in the last 10 years. And for me, like, again, that organic learning through something like that, you can't beat it. You really just can't beat it. I don't think I can say some of the crazy stories we've had on the podcast, but having those moments to just like learn something like that from a completely different perspective, for me, that's what the podcast is all about, you know.
Well, and that's amazing too, because Ron's not somebody who's new to the industry. Ron's been around this industry forever. So the fact that he's willing to grow and learn and change when he discovers, like, hey, we've been doing it wrong, you know, and I follow him as well. You know, I've seen some of the things, the changes they've done over the years, and it's really amazing.
It really is.
You know, you never should stop learning. You know, you should always be willing to accept that fact.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I think with what you do, getting to interview all these people, you must see some amazing ideas and talk to some amazing people.
No, it's true. It's true. And like the really interesting thing was, so talking with Ron, you know, Ron obviously keeps a lot of his animals outside here in Florida, so he has that luxury. Simultaneously, Kevin at Nerd is doing a lot of overhauling at Nerd and focusing a lot on emerald tree boas. So it's been interesting because he'll send me photos of his prototype caging and like what his thought processes are. So I'm able to like compare a lot of these things, see those similarities and see some of those differences. And then when I'm talking to these guys, like, what are you thinking? You know, like I want to know that thought process, and having the access to do that and being able to bring that to the public as well, where it's like, you know, I can Google how to care for an Amazon tree boa or an emerald tree boa, and that's wonderful. I can get a lot of information from that. But to talk to the guys that have 30, 40, 50 of these animals that have the sample size, you know, where you can really see how that information is working, that's invaluable.
No better education than experience half the time.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Any interesting plans? Any future interviews coming up you can tell us about?
Oh man, so right now we're in this weird space. So I work as a musician and I travel a lot. So locking in guests has been a challenge for the last few months. Actually, probably for the last year, really, because I spend a lot of time on the road, and you know, my co-host Rob also has a job and everything. So getting our schedule synced can sometimes already be a bit of an issue.
I bet.
So then trying to lock in somebody else has been a little bit of a challenge. I'm really excited. We've been talking about wanting to get Tom Crutchfield on. You know, Crutchfield, of course, another legend in the industry. And another person I want to bring on for a second time is Ozzy from Ozzy Boyd's. And I love Ozzy because, you know, I know he's a ball python breeder, but his willingness to be candid about the business element of what we do, I think is also something incredibly valuable, because we don't talk about it enough, you know, when it comes to like, I made $1 million. But what does that mean? Like, how much did you actually make? You know, you might have only made 50 grand because you spend so much money, you know, but how that breakdown happens, we don't talk about that as publicly as we do of, I just sold a $20,000 snake, you know? So I love having those conversations with people as well, just because it's like, no, there's a real element to making this a business. What does creating a business in this industry look like? Not necessarily just from the breeder standpoint, but even from like doing a podcast as a business entity or something full time.
Absolutely.
How do you break down expenses and things like that? So I'm excited to try to bring him back for a more in-depth conversation on business.
It's all wonderful stuff. I mean, being that we're at AnimalCon and there's a lot of young kids, I actually got to see the first kid panel a while ago.
I just saw it.
That was so inspiring.
Yeah.
Do you have any words of what you know, you're the podcast, you know, you're on social media, you know, you're creating content. Do you have any advice to those young kids that are just getting into it, or others that are maybe thinking about it and they're not sure what to do? You know, have any advice?
My biggest piece of advice is find something you really like. Find a species of animal that you really like and start from there. You don't have to follow the trend. Even if you really love ball pythons, that's great. Love ball pythons. If you want to breed ball pythons, that's great. Find what you like, because you're going to stick with that a lot more and a lot better and for a lot longer than if you're following a trend, following the dollar, something like that. Just find what you like. There's so many animals that make great pets.
Sure.
You know, like I always love to recommend U.S. native colubrids. And when I was up north, my selling point was always, if you lose power during the winter, that corn snake is probably going to be okay versus that ball python. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, but it's something that people don't necessarily think about, you know?
About it.
So it's like, take the time. We have so many species being captive bred these days, so much access. Take the time to really look at what's out there. You know, if you have a friend that's got a snake, go check out that snake, man. You know, go experience it for real, you know, and just look at what's there.
That's great advice. Thank you very much.
Absolutely,
Appreciate
man.
your time.
My
Enjoy
pleasure.
the rest of AnimalCon.
Thank you too, man.